Take a moment to imagine that you're in a grocery store and there's a kid on the ground screaming and yelling. Is that a meltdown or a tantrum? And how do you know the difference between the two? And that's important because understanding whether it's a meltdown or a tantrum is critical to addressing the situation in a way that is helpful for the person having that meltdown or tantrum. The big key is that we do not want to mistake a meltdown for a tantrum because that can make us react in ways that are actually worse for the individual and will make the situation worse. Now, the first big difference is the cause or the intent behind the behavior. Simply, tantrums usually have intent behind them, that the person is seeking something, whether it's a candy bar, a toy, attention, whatever it may be, that there is a goal in mind that the person has that they want to get. That's not the case with a meltdown. A meltdown does not have that intent behind it, right? It's not this self-serving behavior that is trying to get attention or a reward or a toy. And that's because of the next difference. Tantrums are usually controllable, at least to some extent, while meltdowns are not controllable. So when you think about the difference between the two, think about what happens if that person gets what they want. First of all, if it's a meltdown, you might not know what that person wants. With a tantrum, you usually know what that is, right? It's that toy, it's that candy bar. And so if it's a tantrum, when you give in to what the person wants, usually the tantrum stops there. Now, it might take them a second or two to stop crying, but generally that behavior, what they are doing, is stopped, right? They are no longer going to be screaming or yelling because they got what they want. That's because the tantrum is controllable. Conversely, with a meltdown, giving in isn't going to help. There isn't really something that you can give in about. Instead, that person needs a much different approach. That person needs less stimulation. They probably need to go to a quiet place. They probably need to have reduced sensory input, maybe closing their eyes, going to a dark room. And so just giving in, giving them a toy or giving them a piece of candy is not going to help with the situation. Likewise, punishing the person's not going to help the situation. The person can't control the behavior, and so punishing them is only going to add to the sensory input. And that brings me to my last difference, the after effect. Because tantrums are usually intentional and controllable, once the person gets what they want, the situation is kind of done for at that moment. In contrast, a meltdown takes a lot longer than that to recover from. It can take a day or two to recover from a meltdown. And during that time, there needs to be things that happen for that person to feel less overwhelmed. Less sensory input, having quiet time, having time to sit and reflect, breathing exercises, those types of things. And so critically, as you learn to distinguish between a meltdown and a tantrum, it's also important for us to think about how we can help people who are having meltdowns recover from them. And that's our next video. Thank you again for watching. I always appreciate it. Have a good one.